Giant Tiger Cup. I'm still waiting on the speedometer cable. So, and I can't get hold of the toolbox lid. They seem to be very rare. So rather than hunt the internet for ages or try and find one at an exorbitant price, I decided to have a go at making one. Haven't done it in a while, so it should be entertaining. First of all, you start off with a wooden buck. You cut it to the exact profile of the opening of the toolbox and then radius the corners, as you can see me doing here. It's a good idea to keep it nice and accurate and keep everything as even. It all shows at the end any imperfections in the buck. So take your time. Once the buck was finished, you then cut a piece of aluminium. Here I'm just roughing it out of a sheet, getting it close to the lines without actually touching the lines, making life a bit easier. And sorry you only see my elbow, but here I am nibbling it back to the line, getting it as close as possible. You cut the sheet to the same outline as the buck, but with the thickness of the lid plus a couple of mil added on. Now the buck I made was 19 mil, so I ended up cutting the shape 22 mil bigger than the buck. Then of course I had to anneal the aluminium. So first of all covered it in a layer of soot. This is my favourite method. There is ways of doing it with soap and charred wood, but I do believe this is the easiest. You soot the surface of the metal and then heat the metal until the soot burns off. Here I'm sandwiching the buck, the template of the lump of wood that you've made, centering everything up and squashing it between two pieces. The buck is the bit you form it over. The piece that is on the other side is to hold it flat against the buck, and is usually about 1/4 of an inch smaller than the actual work that you're working. It gives you room to strike with the mallet. So with a nice piece of soft aluminium clamped between these two pieces of plywood, one of them shaped to give the profile of the toolbox lid, you start tapping down on the metal. I start off with a rubber mallet. I find it shrinks the metal round the corners a lot better than hitting it with a hammer, and of course less chance of denting the actual material. So you just gently work your way round and round. Try not to do it all in one go. The more patient you can be with it, the better finish you'll get of the end result. You're trying to shrink the metal onto the piece of wood. So just gently working your way around. If you feel there's a lot of resistance, it won't hurt to take it off and anneal it again. Just again, cover it in soot, burn the soot off, let the metal cool, place it back between the two pieces of wood in the correct orientation, and just carry on tapping it down, working your way round, gradually forming the metal onto the wooden buck. Again, the secret here is not to rush. If you take your time, you can shrink the metal. If you go too quick, you'll end up with a fold in it, and it'll be an impossible task to get rid of it. It comes to a point then where you've done all you can with the rubber mallet. There'll be a certain amount of spring back when you get close to where it's finished. That's when you change to the hammer. The hammer tends to work hard on the aluminium and make it a bit stiffer, less of a spring back, but there will be a bit of spring back at the end which you have to rectify. Also keep an eye on the overflow, if I could put it that way. Here you can see me sanding it back, keeping the edge of the metal flush with the back of the buck. Just makes life easier when you're trying to get that final bit of finish to it. Again, here you can see very light taps, just shrinking the metal into the wood. But you'll always have that bit of spring back, and this is how you correct it, especially in the corners. You just have to shrink the metal around a stake, one of the correct diameter and radius. Just gently working your way round, trying not to move the metal too quickly, taking your time, keeping an eye on it. Sometimes you have to work from the inside to remove a couple of stretch marks, but as you can see, it's just gently catching up on the profile that you want. Until all the sides and the radiuses are parallel. As you can see here, you work the inside as well. Now I've produced this to the shape of the toolbox, but it has a flat top to it, whereas the Triumph has a slight curve to the outside. So to do this, you have to then move on and put it on the English wheel, but just check it for fit every now and then. Push it into place. This is the trick of using aluminium over steel. Steel works in exactly the same way, but takes more effort. You go through the same processes and everything, but with aluminium you can actually push it onto the toolbox and give it a gentle tap, just to make it align with all the surfaces that are originally there. Just getting everything into shape, you know. Happy enough with that nice fit. You have to put the curve on the face of it. For this I used my old homemade English wheel. I really should have polished the wheel, but as this is going to be painted and sanded, I couldn't be bothered, to be honest. So here you can see me squashing it between the actual wheel and the anvil wheel underneath. The anvil wheel is narrow because I'm rolling up to an edge. But basically try and keep the wheel working through the centre and turn the work in a circular motion, radiusing out from the centre, to give that crown effect to the toolbox lid. And as you can see, after a little while you get the crown. Now it doesn't produce the perfect curve because you can't get right to the edge, so you blend it in again with the rubber mallet, removing any low spots as well. As soon as you start sanding it, you'll see the low spots. They'll stand out like a sore thumb. But you gently tap them back into shape, get the face of it flat. Flat's the wrong word. Smooth might be a better word. You want to keep the crown on the panel, but again try and remove any low spots. Eventually you get back to something resembling a flat face. Here you can see me rubbing it with a body file, again to show the high spots and the low spots, but you're best to try and get it a bit closer before you start using that, as it does take off quite a bit of metal if you go a bit nuts. But when you're happy enough, you put a dimple in using this tool. This is for the screw that holds the toolbox on. It's like a little punch to countersink where the toolbox screw goes. Again, just gently tap it until you get the depth that you require. Try not to overhit it, it's always impossible to come back from if you've gone too far, so that's why it's taken me. But there's the finished result, a nice little dimple for the screw to sit in. Again, more sanding, bring the surface up and then give it an etch prime. This is an aluminium etch prime. A trick here that I learnt from the radio control boys is to use a hot air gun on small parts to dry the paint, but it turned out okay. Tomorrow I'll probably put primer filler on it to get rid of any blemishes, but for now that's it. Thanks for watching.